Hi there, and welcome to the Future of Leadership, Guiding Your Team to Success. My name is Suhaiba Neal. I am the owner and founder of Full Circle Business, and I'm going to take you through some things that I've learned at the end of last year and the beginning of this year with regards to where things are headed in the workplace and what that means for you in a leadership role. So let's get clicking. So, starting off my story, for those of you who don't know me yet, I started my career after college with Philadelphia 76ers, landed my dream job, worked there for 5 seasons, and then joined the family business in 2005, which is a residential painting company here in the suburbs of Philadelphia. My father started the business back in 1975, so we're 50 plus years in business and still going strong, moving into second generation. As a part of our family business, I also joined the National Association, PCA. Back when I joined, it was the PDCA, and now it's evolved, and served on the board for the residential sector for about a decade or so. Had my role as president and stayed on and helped with planning and implementation of our annual conference. And in 2020, fun year, I launched a business, the Full Circle Business, which is my consulting company, which is based around systems and processes for scaling and streamlining operations for people in service-based businesses or the trades. So all about putting things in place behind the scenes so you can deliver an exceptional customer experience and have those repeat customers coming back again and again to keep your business steady and then also add-ons for growth as well. Then 2023, I published my first book, Like a Girl, which is a nonfiction story of my life, leadership lessons growing up, all brothers working in all male dominated industries and all the lessons that I learned over the years. And then the last accomplishment, more to come, I'm sure, in 2024, I became a certified behavioral assessment specialist. So we're going to touch on that again today with some of these reports. A lot of that came from this international organization, actually, that works on helping people understand themselves better, understand their teams better, and build better rapport and relationships and interactions at work and at home as well. So today, we're going to touch on, like I said, the behavioral assessment side of things and some of the trends that came out of, all of their years of research and reporting. And then we're going to touch on some of the leadership lessons from my book as well. And the overall goal is to help you elevate your leadership this year and also help elevate the leadership of everyone on your team as well. So TTI is the parent company where I did all of my certification and training, and I am certified in 3 sciences. So DISC is how we operate in the world. A lot of people are familiar with this, and the high D term we hear a lot. Motivators, or they also call them your driving forces, is the why behind what you do. So DISC is how, and that's all behaviors and what you're going to see. Motivators is the why, and that's kind of a little bit more internal. And then EQ is your emotional quotient, and that's how you're able to self-evaluate and regulate, and then also with social awareness and regulation. So we'll touch on those as we go through these insights. So starting with last year, actually, a few trends from 2025 that are carrying over into 2026, and we'll see if they stick around into 2027. Number one is that human-centric leadership is something that came up at the beginning of 2025. It was a really strong indicator of that need for connection. So even though there's this rise in tech, which may seem a little bit kind of backwards, people actually want more human connection. So as a leader, they want to know that you're focused on them as people and then working into the position and the skills and the technology side of doing the job that they were hired for. So that's carrying over from last year. The other one is people do want career development opportunities. So because there's so much going on in the speed of light with regards to all of these technological advances and jobs changing and kind of evolving with the tech as it comes, people do want opportunities to continue to develop their career and kind of learn and grow. They're not as happy as they once were in just kind of a steady, static job where I come to work, I do the same thing all day, every day, and I'm not learning and growing. Number three on this list is the labor shortage is still a bit of an issue, unfortunately. Great net resignation from a few years ago. Post-COVID didn't really help very much. So there are more people searching for jobs right now. So not necessarily leaving and moving on to another job, but there are a lot of employees are still actively looking at the job market to see what's available and what else is out there in terms of an opportunity. So as a leader in your organization, this is where the culture really, really matters. And so people aren't just staying for money. Like I said, they want that connection and they want those opportunities to grow. They want to feel like they're valued where they are. So your culture really matters. I think there was a lot of talk about core values for a couple of years there. It became a very trendy thing. What I can tell you after 2 decades working in our family business and working with multiple other business owners to help them add systems and processes to their business to streamline things. Core values are honestly the foundation of everything that you're going to build off of if you want to keep your business going successfully for the years ahead and for the years to come. So getting really clear about what's important to you as the leader in terms of your vision and your mission and what those core foundational values are that you want to operate off of is critical for being able to connect with your team, being able to provide them those opportunities and making sure that you have a healthy work culture. The other thing I like to tell people is your core values become your litmus test for everything. So it takes the personal aspect out of how you operate your business. These are our core values. When something happens or something comes up, an opportunity, a misstep, an issue, the core values become the litmus test for all of that. Does this align with the core values that we have set for our business? And if the answer is no, it's really easy to say that, you know what, they don't align. So this is not going to work. This is no longer a good fit. If it's a yes, again, it makes an easy decision that, hey, this fits in with what we're all about and what we're looking to do. So having those in place and honoring them will make things much easier moving forward. It'll make it easier to, again, like I said, keep the people that you have happy and engaged, and it will make hiring much easier because if you have these in place, you go through them as part of your hiring process. People will either opt in or opt out based on your core values, or you'll interview people and say, hey, this person feels like a good fit. This person doesn't. The core values become a really clear and consistent foundation to make decisions off of. Number two from last year, which will carry over and continue to be in play for a little while longer, is there are 5 generations in the workforce right now. And we all have different values. So again, the core values being standard helps to even the playing field for everyone and level that playing field as this is what we do here and this is why we do it. 75% of the workforce is also now millennial. So there was all this talk for a lot of years about millennials, how they're a really big generation. They don't really want to work. They don't value hard work. We've passed that now, and now they are the majority of the workforce, and that's not really going to change in anytime soon. Um, with regards to millennials and Gen Z, I'm a Gen Xer, so kind of smack in the middle of all this. They've grown up in a very different world than the Gen Xers and the baby boomers. And silent generation's kind of the ones that are moving out of the workforce and retiring much more rapidly now. But they grew up in a very different world than we grew up in as baby boomers or Gen Xers if you're a leader and you're in that bracket. They're used to subscriptions. They're not used to owning things. So subscription-based model is what they know, and they're okay with that. I know a lot of us Gen Xers are still pushing against that. We want to go I'm the same way. You can see all the books behind me. I go to the store, I buy them. I want to own them. I want to keep them. They're also very big on convenience. So the model of Uber and DoorDash and all of these things that you can do, and Amazon with the 1 day shipping or 2 day shipping, they've grown up with those at the foundational level of their experience. So those are two things to keep in mind if you're working with millennials, if you're working with Gen X, that their values are a little bit different. The world they grew up in feels a little bit different and looks a little bit different than the world for us leaders that are, like I said, the Gen X and the baby boomers. So paying attention to this, making sure that you're aware that we all kind of operate a little bit differently and how do we bring this together to build a cohesive team and recognize the differences there. So 2026, so for this year, trend number one is the AI and career longevity. The majority of the workforce, more than half, is really concerned about this human versus AI in the future and job security. Am I going to have a job? Am I going to have to learn how to do something different? Is my industry going to be wiped out by A computer being able to do what I'm doing. For those of us in the trades, thankfully, can't outsource it. So we have a residential painting company. You can't outsource painting to another country. You can't have a robot, applying paint as of yet. And I don't know if they'll ever get really good at it. So it is a more secure job. If we're in the trades, and I know I've seen a lot of movement towards getting the younger generations more excited about going into the trades as a true career opportunity and something that's a little bit more secure than, per se, a desk job might be moving into the future. So just something to be aware of that people are really concerned about this. And what does that look like in your world? Again, with those career opportunities still coming through from 2025, where are there places where you can help your current employees bridge that gap of AI and human and kind of build some job security and longevity in there with marrying those two things together. Number two is, and this was an interesting one that came up, but been there, done that, of middle manager of being in a family business with my father as the owner and then me and then managing people below me. Middle manager burnout is a real, real issue right now. And these are the people that are carrying the heaviest load and need the most support, and they may not ask for it. So if you're the owner and then you have someone below you that oversees and kind of manages the rest of your either administrative team or your operational team, please make sure that you're checking in with them and asking them, how can I help you? What can we do to make your load a little lighter? What is there that you need more of? Maybe it's some training, maybe it's some support. But these are the people that are, like I said, stuck between, an owner and overseeing a portion or maybe even all of the rest of your team, and they need the most support. So just something to keep in mind this year, especially for us in the trades and in the first quarter, we're getting ready to ramp up and get into what we call our and consider usually our busy season, is making sure that they have the support that they need and that you're not asking too much of these people. Number three is the hybrid work and those team dynamics. So this is not going away. Like I said, again, depending on your industry, it may not affect you. For us, we're in the painting world. Painters have to come to work to do their job. So they're on different job sites every day, every week. That can't be outsourced. It can't be done from home. If you're in an industry or if you're in an office and this became a thing during the pandemic and you have employees that are high value but want to have some of that flexibility, as you can see right now, I'm sitting in a home office doing this webinar with you. It isn't going away. So it's really good and important to recognize that, figure out what it looks like for you and your business and your with your team, where this is applicable and where it's not going to work, and making sure that you have the trust and those boundaries and that communication around, if you're working from home, this is what's expected. This is when we need you in the office. This is why. So there is still a lot of evidence that being together fosters a much better community, a much better collaboration. But there also is the whole work-life balance that people have become much more aware of now, post-pandemic, and wanting to have a little bit of freedom and flexibility sometimes to do things, at home without having to make that commute every day. So depending on your industry, depending on your actual business, something to take a closer look at and make sure you develop a policy that is official and that applies to everyone. If you need to segment it by, administrative team versus a field team, depending on what your industry is, make sure it's very clear who it applies to and when, and make sure it works for you as the business, and then honor it. Number four for this year is, again, the hot topic for the entire webinar is leadership and your future readiness. So unfortunately, was at a talk at our national convention about a month ago and had an economist in, and he said something that I'd also heard kind of towards the end of 2025 at another big conference for a networking group that's international that I'm a part of, and having it echoed twice. 2025 was a very crazy year, kind of a little bit of a roller coaster, a lot of ups and downs, a lot of unknowns. Thankfully, from a financial standpoint, as a country, we ended plus about 3 or 4%. So it was, a small gain for the year overall, but it was kind of a little bit of chaos and mayhem to get there. Unfortunately, the prediction for 2026 is very similar. And now with everything that's happening in the world, that kind of could have been turned on its head a little bit as well. So being able to be adaptive and being able to be strategic and to be self-aware and have those skills of being ready to make a quick and informed decision when necessary to keep your business moving forward successfully is going to be really critical for this year and probably into the future. So soft skills are now going to become the most important and almost mandatory skills for all leaders. And as many of your team members as you can have work on this as well to have, little leaders under the main leader. Like the saying goes, great leaders build more leaders. They don't just build a team full of employees. So these soft skills, which we're going to get into a little bit shortly, are going to be really, really important as we move into a future that is still a little bit up in the air, a little bit uncertain, and where people are having a little bit of trepidation about what's to come with regards to, like I said, all of this tech stuff, all of this AI stuff, everything that's going on in the world and job security, and just being able to feel like I'm confident that I'm working in a place where it's going to be handled, it's going to be taken care of when we're all kind of in this together. So, skills for success. This applies to the very first one applies to Gen X and boomers, especially. It will not be as big of an issue for the millennials and Gen Z. But we're going to touch on all of the skills. And like I said, so machine learning and its AI implementation is going to be the way of the future and something that we're all going to need to learn. Like I said, for those of us in Gen X and those boomer generations who did not grow up with this, that's something we're going to have to kind of take a little bit of extra time and effort to wrap our heads around. Everything else is something that we are going to, like I said, consider a soft skill, but is now going to become very, very critical for success moving forward. So critical thinking skills, emotional intelligence, which we're going to get into more in a little detail in a few slides, emotional resilience. So again, with this world being crazy and with the economy being crazy, being able to, like I said, ride those waves of the roller coaster without it completely depleting you and your ability to continue to move your team forward and your company forward is going to be really, really important. And then curiosity and self-taught learning. So again, like I said in the beginning, people want career opportunities. And one of the things I've learned and one of the reasons I love being a part of a couple of different industry associations, some within my specific industry and some that are, not industry specific, is learning these different things and being curious about different things and being able to piece things back together. So the curiosity and the self-taught learning of the continuous education, because everything's evolving so quickly, is going to be really important as a leader to stay at the forefront of everything. So Gen Z and millennials, 4 additional things that are going to be really critical for them. And this was a separate study that was done actually and revealed these 4 things that are traits that they're really going to need as they move into the workforce and move their way up in the ranks, especially if they want to take on leadership roles of their own, was problem solving. So one of the issues with AI and chat, and I have a daughter in college, is it depletes your problem solving skills. So every time you have a problem, you go to AI, you go to chat, you go to Claude, whatever it may be, and you throw your problem or your question in and you just get an answer. You're not using your own brain. You're not going through that process of, okay, what if this happens? What if that happens? What are my options? You're losing that skill of being able to actually kind of like have that critical thinking and then use that to problem solve on your own without some external help. So that's something that the millennial and Gen Z generation is going to need help with moving forward. Communication. So we're going to talk about this a little bit too as well when we get into the leadership lessons, because they grew up with tech and all these devices and they're on the phone all the time. They're great at texting, they're great at Snapchat, they're great at all of those things. They're not great at actual one-on-one verbal communication, and that's a skill that they're going to need help with as well as we move into the future. Number 3 is perseverance. And it's interesting because I heard a story the other day about video games, and the video games that we played as Gen Xers are very different than the video games that millennials and Gen Zers are playing. And how that plays into, you don't have unlimited lives. There's no cheat codes. You can't buy extra, time or pause your game and come back to it, We grew up playing games and you got three lives, and when you died, you started over and you had to start at the beginning and work your way all the way through again. Never made it to the end of Super Mario Kart because I didn't have the patience for that, but perseverance and being able to work through difficulties and challenges is a skill as well that they're really going to need help with. And they're going to learn this on the job. So being a leader and being aware of this now and being able to help them cultivate these skills on the job because they're not necessarily learning them, kind of in the regular real life through middle school, high school, and college quite enough is something that they're going to look to you for as we evolve and people join the workforce and need to have the skill set, like I said, those soft skills that are actually really going to be critical for success moving forward. And the last one is gratitude. And was interesting when we talked about this in the session where this was covered. The story goes is the more easily that you're offended, the less you feel grateful for things. And so the lack of gratitude for what we have already is going to become a little bit of an issue for Gen Z and millennials and helping to make sure we foster that as well. The other thing is the instant gratification. That's so much easier now because of the internet and the AI and all of the connectiveness and not having to wait for things is also affecting this. So that's the last of the four things that this two generations are going to need additional help with as we move into the future. So EQ, and I said we're going to dig into this a little bit deeper. And so here we go. Emotional quotient. This is your ability to sense, understand, and then regulate your emotions. And so there are five variables when EQ, which is an assessment you can measure. So we're talking about the top left quadrant, self-regulation, and then self-awareness. So self-awareness is I am aware of my emotions, and then regulation is I'm able to regulate those emotions, and how long does it take me to handle that. Social awareness is being aware of the surroundings you're in, whether it's at work, whether it's at a networking event, whether it's at the dinner table with your family, whether you're out and about in the community somewhere. Your awareness of the social surroundings that you're in and the people and the energy that they're emitting in that space and with what's going on. And then again, regulation. Some of us are really good at what I would call reading the room and being able to interject and kind of diffuse situations. Some of us are not as good at that. So self-awareness again, self-regulation. So I understand and aware of my emotions and I'm able to regulate them. And that's where I talk about hitting pause. So being able to hit pause between the awareness and the regulation is what helps us to not react. I always say reactions are kind of usually quick and sometimes not in the best interest of everyone. A response is a little bit slower and has a little bit more of a positive outcome. So on the self-awareness and self-regulation side, I always encourage people learn how to hit pause. So something happens instead of reacting and going right back at it, hit pause, take a deep breath, evaluate, and then respond instead. And then social side again, reading the room, figuring out, can I step in? Can I diffuse this situation? Can I step in and kind of redirect the conversation so we don't end up with a situation as a social regulation? And then the last piece is motivation. So this is your internal drive, and without any external support or push or, kind of input, how motivated are you to be the best version of you that you can be? Really successful leaders and really high performers have really well developed EQ. So being able to assess where you are now and then see, oh, is there something that I can do a little bit better on and work on is going to be really critical for success in the future as a leader and in leading your team, especially, like I said, through kind of some uncertainty that's unfortunately still part of the world right now. So here are some benefits of developing a higher EQ. Improved decision making under pressure, which goes back to, like I said, that critical thinking and emotional resilience that we talked about earlier. And increased resilience to navigate stress more effectively, unfortunately. And I think hopefully I'm getting this story right. It was the head coach of the Duke women's team who said that like life doesn't get easier. Like we think, oh, life is hard, life is hard. it's not necessarily going to get easier, she said, but you can deal with hard better. So that's the goal, is to have that resilience to navigate the stress more effectively. It may not go away, but can I deal with it better? Enhanced collaboration and reduced interpersonal friction. So again, with the social awareness and regulation and understanding your team and the dynamic and how everyone works well together, being the one that can come in and when there isn't an issue and make sure that, we're not going to have issues at work because you're aware of the situations, you're aware of the team dynamics, and you're making sure you're putting people in the right places in the right seats and working with the right counterparts. You can also build more emotionally attuned leaders and teams. So the more aware you are, and then you share that with others, you're able to build their social awareness and EQ as well. So again, DISC, motivators, EQ, all assessments that measure three different things. Of these three things, EQ is the one where you can move the needle the most. And we're going to talk about how to do that on the next slide. DISC, how your hardwired behaviors is pretty set and you can be aware of it. You can adjust it in certain situations. And like, it comes up a lot in sales. It comes up a lot in team dynamics, but it is what it is for the most part. Motivators, again, the why behind how you operate and what you choose to pursue. Pretty hardwired by the time you hit your mid 20s, early 30s. The emotional quotient is something that you can always get better at, and you can move that needle pretty quickly and easily with just a little bit of attention and intention on getting a little bit stronger on these things. So let's take you through some tips to increase your EQ. So better self-awareness, like how well do you really know yourself, how you operate, and kind of what your triggers are, which leads us to number two. Getting really clear about identifying your triggers is the first step into being able to hit that pause button, as I mentioned a few slides ago. Slow down, take a deep breath, and respond, which is in a little bit more of a positive manner than just react when you're triggered. Practice those regulation strategies. So I always tell people the easiest way to calm yourself down is by just breathing, taking some deep breaths, closing your eyes, and kind of hitting reset. I think I read somewhere recently, and if you're a Ted Lasso fan, they say be like the goldfish, as the goldfish has a very short-term memory and they don't remember what happened 30 seconds ago. Your emotions are kind of real and live for about 90 seconds in your system, unless you hit the replay button. So when you get triggered, it's about 90 seconds of that spike. If you can breathe and regulate yourself and get through them and then not hit replay over and over and over again, you can get through it and move to the other side and kind of come to whatever the issue is or whatever the dynamic is in a more neutral space. That's the goal. I always tell people we want to get you back to neutral. We don't want you to be totally revved up when you're dealing with something. We want you in a neutral space. So if there's a way you can practice those regulation strategies so that you get back to neutral before you respond, then that helps with your social awareness, your self-awareness, and that regulation. So get honest about your emotions and name them accurately. Don't just say I'm angry. You could say I'm upset, I'm disappointed, if I'm sad or I'm feeling a little like I'm grieving today, whatever it is. So we're not just going to be happy and sad. We're going to get honest about what you're really feeling, what those emotions are, name them accurately, and then find strategies to deal with them specifically. Communicating with optimism. So this is kind of the glass half full, and it's not always all the time 100% positive. If there's really just not a positive outcome in a situation and you're overly optimistic, that's very inauthentic and people will feel that. But let's try to bring optimism to things, especially with your team. If you're in a leadership role, if you're a business owner, there's a lot of uncertainty in the world. Your team really wants some security and stability from you. You may not have all the answers, but being honest about that, being optimistic about the fact that we can figure this out together will help them as well. And empathy. So seeing things from someone else's viewpoint as a leader can become really critical in your success in dealing with your team and making sure, like I said, going back to that human centric leadership that we talked about carrying over from 2025 will make it much easier to connect with your employees, make sure people feel valued, make sure that they feel, as they always like to say, I felt seen, I felt heard, I felt valued. And so having that empathy and maybe taking a pause and looking at something from a different perspective can be very helpful in the leadership role of really understanding where your team is and what they're dealing with as well. So, where'd he go? Jack, if you are a parent like I am, or depending on your age, if you ever seen the movie Incredibles, the baby Jack is cute as a little button, but he also has all of the superpowers. And when he gets mad at the end of the first movie, he goes off and he turns into a fireball and he's like spinning like the Tasmanian devil. So I do a lot of work with teenagers as well, which we're going to get to when I talk to the lessons from my book. And I always tease most of them my daughter's age. She is in college now. They grew up and they saw all the incredible movies. They said, we don't want to turn into Jack. That's the goal, is figuring out how to regulate yourself enough to be aware that, ooh, that's a trigger. I don't want to go spinning it into, chaos and, destroy everything in my path. I want to learn how to take a deep breath, regulate, and then come back from a neutral position. And that's what happens when you raise your EQ. Another question that we probably don't ask enough as business owners and leaders is, what's it like to work with me? So a lot of times we're worried about everybody else and them working together and, what the company is doing as a whole. But maybe take this moment to reflect on what it's like to work with you as a leader and as an owner and see if there's some room in there again for improvement. I'm always a fan of self-improvement. And I think we've seen and heard it a lot. The goal should be to be better than you were yesterday, every day. So, and as a diehard 76ers fan, on the words of Tyrese Maxey, his goal is to get 1% better every day. And sometimes that's all it takes, is a little tweak. So maybe a little reflection on what's it like to work with me as the leader and the owner, and what can I do to enhance my entire team by getting more aware about myself and my own style and my own kind of issues, maybe, or kind of habits or tendencies that may need to be tempered down a little bit or kind of reevaluated. So again, we're talking about these emotional triggers with EQ. You're in the middle, you're in the emotions, and it could be people, it could be places, it could be things, it could be situations. The emotions are that level in between, and how are we going to regulate that better? And ultimately, what we want is to build a happy workplace. Like I said, going back some slides, with half the population kind of dabbling in seeing what's available on the job market right now. We don't want to lose good people because we don't have a solid culture, and I don't have a grip on, like I said, emotions and the ability to lead successfully. So, phase two, leadership development, we're going to move into the book. So, again, it's called Like a Girl, 22 Leadership Lessons for Women on the Rise. I wrote this book and published it 2023. My daughter had just gone off to college, and that was my goal, was I wanted her journey into leadership to be a little bit easier, a little bit smoother than mine was. So again, 3 male-dominated industries. I grew up with all brothers, and I met my fair share of challenges along the way. So the lesson number 9, I'm going to go through 3 lessons, and this is the number that it is in the actual book, lesson number 9. So the first time I gave this talk was because my younger brother volunteered me to give this talk before asking me if I wanted to give this talk. And then I realized, oh, wait, this is really helpful information. Let me share it again. So gave this talk live to our local business association here where I live, room full of other business owners, probably a mixed group of people my age, people older than me. My younger brother was in the back of the room. He did not heckle me, thankfully. But lesson number 9 in my book is just say yes. And so we are actually on our way to a Sixers game, having a conversation. He's like, "Oh yeah, I volunteered you to talk at the business association annual meeting because they needed a speaker." And I said, "Oh, my sister would be great." And in my brain, I'm thinking of all the reasons why I'm not qualified to do this. And as I'm doing that, he's rattling off all the things he told to the coordinator of the event about me and all of my accomplishments. Oh, she's run the family business for years. She's got her own business. She wrote a book and she's got all these certifications. So just say yes. When somebody sees, and I tell this especially to the younger generation, teenagers, high school, college age kids, if someone sees something in you that you haven't quite seen in yourself yet, and they give you an opportunity or they encourage you to pursue it, just say yes. So be the girl who decided to go for it. And so I went for it. Like I said, did the talk, went very well, got a lot of great feedback, met a bunch of other local business owners in the community, and now they know who I am and what I do, what I have to offer in the event that they need help with something with regards to self-awareness and leadership and the, like I said, the assessments or helping with the team dynamics. And so that's lesson number 9. Lesson number 12 is trust your gut. So people always ask me about the book 22 Lessons. This is my favorite lesson and favorite chapter. And as a biology major, a little science for you, your gut actually reacts before your brain. So when you get that initial feeling, when people talk about, oh, I got this, this gut feeling, your gut actually can read the room much quicker than your brain can. And unfortunately, what happens is you have this gut reaction. And then in the next kind of, 30 to 60 seconds, as the information makes its way to your brain's like, yeah, but really, are we so sure about that? And because your brain goes last, it sometimes talks you out of what your gut told you. So my biggest thing is, especially for women, is to trust your gut. It really is. Intuition can be a superpower if you can tap into it, if you can pay attention to it, if you can learn to listen to it. And like I said, don't let your brain talk you out of something that your body already told you and confirmed, and that you kind of have this feeling about that, this is the right choice. And your brain's like, well, maybe, maybe not. And so trust your gut when those moments when things come up and you have that initial first reaction, that's usually the one you want to follow. Lesson number 14 is, again, we're going back to communication and relationships. And this applies a lot to, like I said, those of us that have the millennials and the Gen Zers working for us and as they continue to move into the workforce. They grew up with all of this technology. I remember the computer with the green screen, actually, way back in the day, when probably in the 80s, when my dad had a computer for his master's. And, every once in a while we were allowed to play a couple games on it. There was probably only 2 that even existed. But the millennials and Gen Z, they have grown up with all of this technology and they're used to it. What they do not have the same skill set for, and we talked about this a little bit before, is these communication and relationships. So when my daughter started kindergarten, the opening talk for her back to school night, the head of the school said the most sought after skill from her generation is going to be the ability to communicate, and not with a device. I mean, literal communication, open your mouth, use your words, talk to people, look them in the eye. So making sure that you're modeling this for everyone in your organization. And again, like I said, helping the younger generations to build on this skill set and get comfortable with this is going to be really critical for the future success of business. At the end of the day, and this goes back to, like I said, that people needing people, the more tech there is, the more humans want to actually interact with another human and want to connect with another human. I actually have a friend who says sometimes he puts typos in his newsletters on purpose so people know it's not a bot that wrote it, so that they know an actual human wrote it. So people want to connect with other people. We need to feel those real connections and not just that we're dealing with technology all the time. So again, like I said, the book, Like a Girl, is 22 lessons. 22 is the number I wore on my jersey every time I played a sport, my basketball number all the way through. And so there are 22 of them, and then that bonus lesson of Celebrate Anything if you're interested in learning more about the book. Some additional resources. So if you're a woman in leadership, if you know a woman in leadership, if you're raising a daughter and you want some more help and some more insight on leadership from a female perspective, I have a website that's dedicated specifically to that. I write a weekly newsletter that is short and sweet. It is not a pitch at all. It's free. It's all about leadership. It's 1 lesson per week. A lot of it comes from the book. Some of it just comes from real life and what happened to me last week. And I write a lesson about that. So you're welcome to sign up for that. Like I said, every Friday you'll get a short, sweet newsletter with 1 lesson, 1 takeaway to help you continue to enhance your leadership skills and development. And if you hop over to my website as well, there is a sneak peek of the first few pages of the book if you want to read that a little bit before you go ahead and purchase it. There are links there for buying it as well from Amazon. You can buy it from my publisher and printer directly. There's a Kindle version available, so whatever format you prefer. group there ready for if you're interested, or if there's a woman in your life that you think could benefit from that. For the consulting side of things, like I said, if you own a small business, especially in trades or service industry, or just anywhere where you're dealing with people and you want some help with better self-awareness for you, or you also want to kind of have your whole team go through the process. I've done this, a handful of times with teams, and the dynamic has really changed and shifted because everyone has a better awareness of themselves and how to interact with each other better. So we go to my website and there's a page for the assessments because you or hear or watch this webinar. Um, if you put in the code leadership on the coupon page when you go to check out on any of these three full assessments. So again, like I said, we talked about DISC, we talked about motivators. There's another one, competencies, which risks your skills from highest to lowest. And what we've all learned over the years is that focusing on the things that you're really good at is better than trying to get better at something you're not inherently good at. So you figure out what your top 5 competencies and skills are. And if you can make sure you're playing into those at work, you're going to have a much better experience. You're going to be much more successful. So there's an assessment that includes that. And there's one that includes all 4 if you're interested. So again, DISC is how we operate in the world. And once you understand that, you can actually kind of adjust as needed depending on who you're dealing with. It's a great tool to use if you're in a sales role. The motivators is the why behind how we operate. I'm a very high theoretical. I love knowledge. I love learning new things. So hence all the books behind me. Competencies is your, like I said, ranking your skills and what your top skill sets are. And then the EQ is the self-awareness and social awareness, self-regulation, social regulation. And that's the one where you get some really great tips in the report on how to work on that for yourself personally based on what your score is and how to move that needle up a little bit higher. You can also learn more about the team assessments while you're on that page. Like I said, we do DISC for teams where everybody in management role in your company takes a DISC assessment. We do a debrief meeting with everyone, explain what DISC really is and what the goals are for learning more about yourself and learning more about how your coworkers operate as well so that you can work better together, communicate better. And then we create a circle where we map where everybody lands with regards to their style and to see if your business really is covering everything that you need to cover. So that's a resource that is available to you as well. Questions, if you're watching this replay, you can find me on LinkedIn, you can find me on Instagram, you can find me on Facebook, you can shoot me an email if you have additional questions. I love to be helpful, so feel free to reach out and I'd be happy to answer some additional questions for you. And thank you for your time.